night of total terror.
We're going to talk about our backyard drive-in with our Dos Incredibles international correspondent all the way from Cork, Ireland, Michael Brendan Hayes. He's on. He's ready. He's a Night of the Living Dead expert.
Is he still there?
He's still there.
I am still here.
He's still here. So
loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. The shot looks great. Looks nice and shiny.
There he is.
There he is.
So that's why everything broke. People don't understand broke because we're trying to have a conversation with somebody from Scotland.
we literally
Ireland, I'm sorry.
We literally funneled in Ireland right here.
Ireland.
So, yep, that what better way to give you an intro than just literally to have you crash the show? But he's your friend. We've done a couple of shows with Brendan. We did a great Scream show. We did the phenomenal Halloween show as well. That I think it's going to be timeless because Brendan is in the town. If you listen to that podcast, where basically I guess he would be the antagonist was from, right? Colonel Cochrane was Cork, Ireland.
Yeah, he would have been born in the county where I live, but he would have moved on to another county when he was a young child. So his roots are in my county in Cork, Dan O'Hurley.
God, that's it. Yes. So anytime we have the go-to of the special horror shows, we make sure we involve Brendan. And this week obviously was a very special one because it was the season 4 premiere of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs and Darcy the Mail Girl. And we celebrated this by making our very own backyard drive-in so we can enjoy the double feature known as Night of the Living Dead and Anthropophagus.
Can you say that again, please?
Anthropophagus, also known as The Beast and of the Grim Reaper. And if you've seen this flick, it's her sister, right? Mia Farrow's sister, Tisa.
I'm not sure.
Tisa Farrow.
I don't think she would admit it, though.
Yeah, she would not admit it. So, Brendan, I don't know if I know you said you're not familiar with the Anthropophagus, but you are familiar with Night of the Living Dead. But before we start, we got to just do a quick, let's test the close-up cam and let's just go through what it looked like in Dos Incredibles' backyard. If we see there, we had some cool shots. There she is right there, Tisa Farrow. All right.
Talking through it.
Yep. And I'm just doing a little scrolling gimmick here. There is Brendan, that's the one that since we really want to focus on Night of the Living Dead, we're going to basically tell you what this dude here did. So this dude right here went digging around like he was an OBGYN right after this scene here, and he pulled out a fetus and started eating it like it was a payata? Is that what he called it? Like yeah, it was pretty gnarly, man. It was pretty gnarly. But as you can see, I mean, we did enjoy it. We had actually a eerie night here in Austin. If you see that, it was kind of perfect with that gray sky. Give you the shot of the screen because this was basically a live house show that we're going to be doing on the spots.
It looks brilliant.
Yeah, she went swimming, of course. That was the Jaws scene that was in there. But yeah, we had Darcy. We had some good shots. It was a good time. It was a long one. It was a long night, but it was a fun night. But what was more important is this film that we're going to talk about, the 1968 classic Night of the Living Dead.
Jeff, I feel like you're still shook from the technical difficulties.
Yeah,
we're going to be we're good. We're good. We got everything sorted.
Yeah, we're good. And I'm just
we're all good.
Yammering on. So, but Brendan, what do you tell us a little bit about your experience? Like, I know for me, I was telling you, Mario, this is pretty much what my mom considered the Blair Witch Project, of just like the word of mouth for Night of the Living Dead. Like, as I started growing up, like, no, you can't watch that. That's too terrifying.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in my family even, like, would consider watching it back then. Like, it was just not anything even anybody would watch. That and The Exorcist.
Oh yeah, The Exorcist. Like, once The Exorcist came, it kind of overrode what Night of the Living Dead was in the horror community. Brendan, what from the international perspective, tell us about the reputation of Night of the Living Dead.
One of my first experiences of watching or hearing about Night of the Living Dead was actually the Tom Savini remake. And that would have been back in 1990, I think that came out. And
yeah, that was 1990, yep.
And prior to that, in the 80s, as a child, I would have seen, and I should have seen, Dawn of the Dead, and loved it. And then as I grew older and became more of a film buff and film fan, you learn the genesis of all this is back in 1968 from George A. Romero. And it's just for its time, it's an incredible film, and there's so many interesting stories attached to it. Made on a budget of $114,000. It is rejected by so many distributors because of a plethora of different reasons. They didn't like the black and white. They didn't like the idea of, spoiler alert, the protagonist being killed at the end, and they wanted that to be changed. But Romero and Russo, etc., decided absolutely not. And then the biggest one of all, and the biggest story attached to this movie, is the fact that the distributors, Walter Reed, when they changed it from The Flesh Eaters, which was it wasn't the original title. Romero wanted to call it House of Anubis.
Oh, yes, we did. Joe Bob talked about that.
House of what, though? House of Anubis?
Anubis.
Anubis is an Egyptian god who has something to do with the dead. But I think Romero thought it might have been a bit pretentious and nobody would have understood it. So when they were changing it to Night of the Living Dead, they omitted the copyright. And it wasn't noticed until a few years later. And to this day, I believe Night of the Living Dead is completely public domain.
It is.
So if you see any movie with Night of the Living Dead playing in the background and some TV, they haven't paid a red cent for it.
Yeah, and Joe Bob explained that it had something to do with the film stock, right? That the way it got cut off too.
No, they actually, what happened was it was called Night of the Flesh Eaters, and they had the copyright mark on that title, that piece of film on the title. And when they changed the title, they snipped that piece of film, they snipped it out and replaced it with the one with the other title, and it didn't have a copyright mark on it.
And that was it. And yeah, because like if you go to their Wikipedia page, you can watch the whole movie. It's right there. It's right there under the Wikipedia page.
We could watch it right now and just put it on and play the whole thing.
And we finally would not anger the algorithm. And
it made 263 times its budget. Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It made 30 million, which would be the equivalent of about 247 million today. And Romero would say that he saw very, very little money in terms of profit.
Yeah, from the actual profit from that one. Obviously his career, he was a made man in a sense. After, eventually, again, they talked about this on the show, he did not embrace, because he wasn't a horror movie director per se, right? That was just his style.
He found it hard to be a director. He's gone on record saying that he found it hard to be stern and direct with these people on set, because as he said himself, there was too much democracy in the production of it, and a lot of the cast had different hats, including the woman who plays Mr. Cooper's wife in The Cellar.
Yes.
She was doing makeup effects on people as well. And ironically, as we're speaking about makeup effects, that scene where they're eating what looks like human remains after the truck is burned out, that's actually some kind of ham shanks with chocolate sauce. And the extras were so nauseated looking that they didn't even have to put makeup on them. So that's an interesting trivia. But,
yeah, that's interesting because, you're talking about Marilyn Eastman as Helen Cooper.
Marilyn Eastman.
Yeah, and it said Eastman also played a female ghoul eating an insect. So, again, I guess it was like the low-budget pro wrestling shows when, like, hey, we're going to need you to work 3 times. You got a mask.
That was also the name of the guy in the Anthropomorphis. It was George Eastman.
Oh, you're right.
And that was his fake name. He just took that name because it was the name of the film stock.
Oh, that's right, because he had his real name was actually way better. Was it Magada? I'll have to look it up. Yeah, George Eastman. Yep, there it is. Oh, Luigi Montefiore. Yeah, I'm not even. Yeah, I tried. I failed.
One of the most interesting things I find about this movie is the fact that Dwayne Jones it's 1968. As you can imagine, the civil rights movement has barely been passed. It's in its infancy after Lyndon Baines Johnson rushed it in after JFK's assassination. So there's still going to be this racial prejudice there. And according to all sources, Dwayne Jones is the first lead black actor or African-American actor in any movie. And he, as Marilyn Eastman said, was a tortured individual. I mean, this man died at 51 years of age. And when Carol Hardman, who plays Harry Cooper, when he talks about him, he has since passed away himself, but whenever he talked about him, he would well up and get very emotional. So
that's pretty young.
Very young. He died of heart failure, but it's groundbreaking in so many ways. It's the godfather of zombie films. We would have no Walking Dead or Resident Evil without Night of the Living Dead, and it broke barriers when you had someone like Dwayne Jones taking on the lead role. And George Romero would have said that the initial character was supposed to have been an arrogant truck driver, and he never envisioned him as either Caucasian or African American or whatever. And Dwayne Jones got this part on merit and merit alone, because he went for the audition in Pennsylvania, where they shot it, in Pittsburgh somewhere, and it was just decided. I don't think any of these people involved in the film ever considered his race in any negative connotation.
No,
they were just very happy to work with him.
No, his presence, any scene that he did, his presence on there was incredible. Like he felt like a leading man when he was on there, which I did not know. He went on to appear in another Long Island classic, Beat Street, in 1984. Now, after the show, I'm going to have to look that up.
Bro, your production company should be Long Island Classics.
Yeah, Long Island.
You should copyright that now.
Just right now, or forget to do it and let it go in the public domain and let it live on forever. Because obviously, it did this film a favor. Because like It's a Wonderful Life, also public domain, and that re-showing of it really is what helped keep it alive, ironically, for Night of the Living Dead, was that ability. For me, that opening scene was incredible. And it still, to this day, it creates a perfect ambiance. Like, you just know when they're coming to get you, Barbara. Stop it. You're ignorant. That was it. Right?
I have to say, it's one of my favorite lines in any film.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
It's iconic.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah. Oh man.
They're coming, Barbara.
Yes.
And if there's a scene in Shaun of the Dead where Sean's mother is called Barbara, and when Sean and the Nick Frost character decide that they're going to go and rescue his mother from the zombies, although you're not supposed to say zombies, Nick Frost's character says, We're coming to get you, Barbara.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, again, that's it's influenced so
Brilliant,
many
man.
filmmakers,
Yeah.
so many. Yeah, I mean, if you have any friends named Barbara and you're going to say it at least once. Look, here comes one of them now.
My grandmother's name was Barbara, ironically.
Oh yeah, so you had to have said it, but that really set the tone of this movie. That again, the most important thing is not always about the jump scares, right? It's not always about the jump scares. It is setting the ambiance. We worked hard to set that ambiance in our backyard drive-in because it's just the feel, right? You have to have that feel, and that just starting off in the cemetery and a slow burn, and then when Ben came onto the scene, again, like I said, he was so dominating, and he just gobbled up every scene he was in. So that ending when he was shot, I remember watching it probably way younger than I should have. That was absolutely shocking. Like you said, any other ending probably wouldn't have done, because that really drove home that don't forget, this is a horror movie and it's not going to have a happy ending.
And ironically, the opening scene in the graveyard was actually the last scene they shot.
Oh, really?
So when everything else was in the can, they went and they shot the cemetery scene.
Well, again, that's where the magic was made. So Mario, I remember you were saying that you kind of got into the horror movie scene a little bit late, right? Like you said, it wasn't something like growing up that it was part of your regular regimen.
Yeah, no, I was scared of horror movies as a child. I didn't want to go see them, so I didn't really see them until I got older, like late high school and into college, and I started to really get into them. But like the thing, I'm talking about Night of the Living Dead and what's scary about it. I think when we were watching it the other night, and I was telling you at this point, the thing that really stood out to me is one thing that makes it scary is it does something innovative that no movie had done before. I think it gives it sort of a leg up, where it was using the news footage as sort of like
right
to sort of like build out the story. And people, people in that time were not entirely all. There was not documentaries yet; they weren't a thing, so people didn't really get what reality TV, any kind of that stuff, what it was. So I think those scenes are particularly scary when you hear the guy on the television telling you where to go for safety and what's going on. I think that added an element that just really elevates the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, because one of the newscasters was the Chili Billy Cardilli as himself. So he's literally was a real newscaster from Pittsburgh that they put in that movie, right?
That's how you do it. If you want to get good news stories posted about you, you hire the news guy to be in your movie.
Yeah.
He was actually reluctant to take that position. He said that he was just too busy. And Romero said to him, come along down, come down on Sunday morning and we'll get the whole thing wrapped, and, we won't have you hanging around. And unfortunately, he did come down and he was hanging around. I think like any typical movie set, you're going to be hanging around because people are going to be getting lighting right. People are going to be getting all the props right, etc. But he's very glad. I think he might still be alive, but the documentary that I watched about it, he's very glad to have been a part of it. And he nearly wasn't. But, he added a great element for the exposition of the film.
And there's a lot of these great films that, a lot of these performers considered throwaway films, and maybe they would hurt their career, and now they're getting a second life at a career with just traveling the circuits and being basically worshipped as like these cinema idols, so to speak, up from a lot of these movies. We see it like when we went to the cult classic convention. I mean, people are just like relish these. Again, it has a lot to do with the repeated viewing. These people start to feel like them.
I think, yeah, but I think people, because the whole nostalgia is big, and now you've got YouTube, which is big. Thank you, YouTube, for putting on our show. But like, you can rewatch things and revisit clips and make memes about little scenes from old movies. So, just gives things a new life.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
What happened?
Oh, I knocked the camera over.
Oh.
No big deal. All right, keep talking.
So, go ahead. Yeah, but like, you can make a living now traveling the circuit and selling your autograph and doing autograph shows. And I mean, I don't know. It was a fun vibe at Cult Classics Convention, and I was not expecting much out of the festival.
No, it really was. Again, it had a weird science reunion, but there's a lot of people that really look at, the 80s as like this peak cinema where a lot of it was garbage. But we got to remember a lot of this stuff, Brendan, that was a perfect way to put it. Calling this the Godfather of cinema, a lot of it came born of these risky filmmakers that were doing things that weren't guarantees, which it doesn't exist anymore. Let's just call it. It doesn't exist anymore. Like, it's got to be an IP, and then the people that are controlling the IP are being controlled, and it's not necessarily even respecting the IP, right? And it's just like, so now if you're like, oh, okay, they would never make something that's unique like this anymore because they're like, no one's ever heard of it before. Let's just do the requels, or let's do something that's like it. But then they don't honor that legend. But so to me, it's just like, that's what made 70s and 80s like such a magical time with film. They were just rolling the dice, man. And like, okay, let's scratch together some money and let's see what we can do.
Romero would say as a child that his uncle would have bought a lot of different cameras and wouldn't have known how to use them. And he figured out how to use them himself. And today, if one was to buy any kind of camera, Blackmagic, Canon, whatever the case may be, if they had any difficulties at all, they can just go on YouTube and put in how to do this and how to do that. But a lot of his stuff was self-taught. He was in college and he was doing some kind of art degree. And there's one story where he said he was with one of his college friends and they were supposed to paint this nude. And instead of him painting the nude, he was just drawing a picture of the Ben-Hur poster. He had no interest in this, but he wanted to make films. And he said that he made these features, quote, which were, probably rubbish, he thought, but he had that passion. He just wanted to make films, and he wanted to scare people, and that's what he did. And he did it hell or high water, because it took 10 years for him to go on and make Dawn of the Dead, because it's fair to say that Night of the Living Dead was not an overnight classic. They put an awful lot of hard work into promoting that movie.
No, it was by no means an overnight classic at all. But it was inadvertently making history, right? Because let's talk a little bit about the Carl Hardman character. Let me see. His name was Harry Cooper. Mario, you were laughing about this. You were basically like, this dude just wants to watch Fox News, right? He had that vibe that he actually... And I don't think, again, there was no intentional racial tension built into this film. I think it maybe happened inadvertently, and it really told a story of just basically you had this character that was not going to let the Ben character come in here and take control, in a way trying to keep him down and like, we're not doing it your way, even though it makes sense. We're going to be doing it my way. And it added that racial tension to it inadvertently, I think. But you're right. I mean, it just happened to be
I think it adds the racial tension by not bringing it up.
Right.
Because this is the late 60s, USA. It's there. By not bringing it up, it actually draws more attention to it. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
It's like, if you think about it from an artistic perspective, it's just like, it's a given that something like that would be said or whatever, or things could go that way. I think by not bringing it up, it actually makes it more of an issue, and that's how it seems inadvertent,
Yeah. And he just happened to look like somebody that would have been, racist at that time, I guess, right?
And like, Ben looks chill and reliable and trustworthy. He comes in that sweater, like he just got off work. He looks like he smokes the good cigarettes. So like, he just seems like a cool dude. He seems like a lead.
He absolutely does. Yeah, and I think that's what made that ending so stunning. That you felt like he was able to overcome, and ironically, the idea that wasn't his idea ended up being the idea that he needed to do, but he was able to overcome and then he wasn't able to overcome. And to this day, I mean, just you had to keep watching the end credits, right? When those titles were rolling, and you basically watched now the journey of the body of Ben. It was, to me, it was just like, it was like watching real, like Time Life took these pictures from the 60s and you were seeing this happen. And I think that's what really helped it.
And Romero would say that there was absolutely no intent whatsoever to have any social commentary about any kind of racial prejudice in it. And if you think of the Carl Hardman character, Harry Cooper, he's actually not a bad guy. He's trying to protect his daughter down in the basement.
Yes.
And he thinks she's sick. He has no idea that she's going to transform into this flesh-eating ghoul or whatever other term they're using. They're not saying zombie. But that's why, and of course, in many ways, and people will argue, he was dead right. Yeah. Stay in the basement. That's where it's safe.
Yeah, exactly. It ended up that his idea was right. And he would just, and they didn't listen to him.
Well, let's just call it, I mean, nobody in this movie is outright terrible. You know, I think all of their ideas are pretty much arguably, they could have been right. And I think what the main villain here is like, who's wrong? It's the angry mob, right? Outside that ends up taking everybody out.
Yeah. No, you're right. There wasn't anybody. And that's what made it work. The realism made it work. If you got 5 people in a room in a terrifying situation, you're going to get 5 different answers on how are we going to survive this. And everybody, because they're coming from a place of fear when they're trying to think, and that's going to change everything. What do you think about the black and white aspect? You know, when I was talking about, the Harry character, he literally looked like somebody that would have been a character in the Twilight Zone, which, we know that's my favorite show.
Everybody looks like a character from the Twilight Zone, but especially the ones that are non-actors. Everybody, essentially the angry mob, that's all like non-actor. When I say non-actors, they were all non-professional actors that were in the movie. They hadn't really done anything, but like they wanted to be actors. The people that are in the angry mob are just like friends. You know what I mean? Like the guy was like, they're all messed up.
That was
like that line.
Yeah, that was a great line.
An excellent actor couldn't deliver that line that way.
Dude, I wish you can find that line. Although I think we should play the "We're Coming to Get You, Barbara," because we're not going to get in trouble because we can do it, right?
Absolutely.
Public domain.
Yeah, it's public domain. Which, who knew that would be? It feels like it was made for the right reasons, and then the universe put it right where it needed to be to succeed, to create this genre that we all know and love because it was in the public domain. But Brendan, you think it would have been different if it was in color?
There is actually a version on YouTube of it. It's colorized. I don't know who did it, and I watched a piece of it recently, but no, I prefer the black and white.
Yeah.
It gives me Twilight Zone vibes, and and ironically, as well, as we're on the black and white thing, that's why a lot of the distributors didn't want to use it. It was 1968. They were saying to themselves, why are we going backwards? Why are we going to black and white?
Yeah, but when you think about it, that's another interesting thing about the movie is like it's black and white, which seems like a throwback, but also kind of progressive at the same time. So it's doing 2 different things at the same time.
Yeah.
And today we have a plethora of different films which have chosen to go black and white for multitude of different reasons, just to be artistic. The one that rolls off the top of my head in terms of horror, and it's not a very good one, and I watched bits and pieces of it, is the Human Centipede 2.
Was that in black and white?
It was, and I watched some of it, and I just tell you, it's a horrific film. No. A bit like that Anthropophagus thing. No, I wouldn't be watching it again.
Oh man, yeah, that film was like a whole nother level. So originally too, I was reading a little bit about this, and I remember Joe Bob, which if you haven't subscribed to Shudder, we don't have a promo code, but and I know, Brendan, you can't get it over there yet, unless I guess you would need like to get one of those VPNs and get it. But
I'd have to get a VPN, yeah.
Yeah, I highly would recommend that streaming service is phenomenal. But anyway, Joe Bob, he's just on his game, man. He's just on point. And, when we met him, they're so passionate about this. And then the backstories that they give on all this horror history is great. But like, we had no idea. It was like, originally it was co-written as like a horror comedy. And then they wanted to do like an alien gimmick too. And then they wanted to do the Egyptian god gimmick. I mean, there were so many, they really didn't even land on what it was going to kind of be. And then it was like, I had no idea that it was kind of inspired by, the Omega Man, right? Was that Charlton Heston, the I Am Legend?
Which one was inspired by Omega Man?
Night of the Living Dead.
Really?
Yeah, remember Joe Bob was talking about that, and I was like, Brendan, I don't know if you knew that or not, but I was like...
I did. Romero would actually say that he, quote, kind of ripped off the Omega Man idea and made it his own. So he's quite open about that. He was when he was alive, certainly. So yeah, I was aware of that, and then of course, if we're talking about the Omega Man, the loosely based on what's it called, I Am Legend.
Oh, I Am Legend, yeah.
Probably one of the most awful zombie films I've ever seen in my life.
Well, don't worry, something tells me that is now suddenly in development hell. Slap. So I don't think you're gonna have to worry about the sequel coming on to that. But speaking of sequels, though, obviously, Night of the Living Dead. There's not many films that can capitalize on the feeling, the magical feeling that a sequel can come from the original. But Dawn of the Dead did it. Are we all in agreement on that? I mean, Dawn of the 100%. Dead was also a classic. If Night of the Living Dead was a 60s classic, Dawn of the Dead was a 70s classic.
And I have to say, hats off to Zack Snyder for the remake. The remake was absolutely top-notch.
Yeah.
He did a stellar job on that.
Yeah, but he's got balls, man.
He did his own thing with it, and it came out good. They could have just called it maybe something else, and it would have done way better.
Yeah, because...
Mall of the Dead
Mall of the Dead would have been great.
You've got a huge hit.
Oh, can you imagine if you just call it? It's like, yeah, it's inspired by, but we're calling Mall. Oh man, you should have booked that one. I love that title. That's awesome. Well, technically, we can make that and just make it a sequel to Night of the Living Dead, right?
Yeah, but
and then of course
Mall of the Living Dead.
Mall of the Living Dead.
And then of course you've got Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead. It's unfortunate that towards the latter end of the series that the films started to become poorer and poorer.
Brendan, have you seen Land of the Dead? What's your Land of the Dead review?
I've seen it a while back, I'm sure. I'm a bit confused now because I think the last one I remember seeing was Diary of the Dead, which I wasn't fond of.
Yeah, that's the found footage one, but that one
that's
was not very
it.
good.
Yes, that's
Land of the Dead, I think, is pretty good.
Okay, I think I might have that somewhere. I might check that out. But definitely for me, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead are definitely up there, and Dawn of the Dead more so, I have to say. I wasn't majorly gone on the idea of them having this zombie, Bubba, trying to be intellectual and sophisticated for a zombie. But one of the most memorable scenes for me in that film actually is where the hands come out of the wall and just scare the absolute shit.
And then the girl, she throws her arms up like, woo. Yeah, that's a really good gif. And I know it was pretty cool. What was his name in that, Bub? The zombie they were experimenting on.
Bubba.
Like when he putting the headphones on, it was just like... So if for some reason it always did have an undertone of comedy, even if it was unintentional.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of comedy. It did satire.
Yeah, satire. Yeah.
It did have that undertone of comedy, and maybe that's why I didn't like it, whereas Dawn of the Dead was far more tense and suspenseful, and you again had this group of people who were, I don't know if you've ever heard of Big Brother. It was this TV series.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
yep.
even sure whether they're still running.
We have multiple seasons here.
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, the dynamics between people trapped in an area. So you've gone from a small house out in the countryside, a Night of the Living Dead, to a shopping mall. And even in the shopping mall, the dynamics are still poor because people are just rubbing each other up the wrong way. And then, of course, you've got the motorcycle gang that come in and invade the place. Tom Savini was one of those guys.
Tom Savini was great in that. That was, I think that was my first exposure to seeing him. And then as time went on, you realize, oh my God, that's the guy from Dawn of the Dead. As he started making a name for himself in that industry. But that was
my first exposure to seeing him was at the strip club with Greg Nicotero.
Oh, in real life though.
I told you that story, right?
Yeah. No, tell it again. But yeah, I think that was an IRL story. Go for it.
Yeah,
tell us that.
I was with my buddy at the strip club. We were just hanging out, having a beer, doing the strip club thing, and we looked across. I looked across, and the table across, I saw it was Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero sitting together having beers at the strip club. And then, the girls come up and they're like, "You want to dance or whatever?" I was like, No, but you know who's that is over there? That's Greg Nicotero and Tom Savini. Is like, oh, okay. Are they famous? Yeah. And that was just completely just whatever, fanboying out. But nobody could give a shit. But they were just in there, obviously, just to be discreet in the dark. I don't know what it was at the time when Austin was shooting a lot of Quentin Tarantino movies and that stuff. But saw them both there, and you can't talk to them at the strip club. You can't be able to say, "Hey, bros, you've inspired me." They're obviously there because they don't want to be disturbed or whatever. Right?
Right. Yeah. No, they're for flesh eating. They're there for a different type of flesh eating, if you know what I mean. Exactly. Get that. Get you some. Get you some. You know it, but yeah. So I don't. Tom Savini. But we were talking about how it had an underhoned attention, and maybe this was just in the craziness that was the Gretler household in Long Island. And I told you my brother, it was my exposure to all these horror movies, and he would fast forward to all the kill scenes, and he'd fast forward to all the gruesome scenes. We're going to talk to a therapist about it, but he's fine. Everything's fine. But he kept rewinding the scene when that guy got the top of his head chopped off from the helicopter multiple times. And he was laughing so hard. It reminded me of the scene from The Naked Gun when they came out laughing hysterically, and then they pan up and you see they're watching Platoon. And you're like, why are you laughing like that? It was the same thing, but it was just he kept rewinding it again and again just
because it's a cool effect.
It was a great effect. It's a good effect
for what
really
they did, right?
Was.
And Tom Savini was real specific because if you watch that effect, it's not like he gets his head cut off and blood shoots everywhere. It's no, it comes off and two very specific squirts of blood come out of the side. And it's oh, that's where the arteries are. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's a good effect.
It was very precise. And it had that split second thing of when you hear about when any kind of animal decapitation where, in Faces of Death, when they show that and it shows him running around. That's what it reminded me of. The zombie didn't even realize that he had his head lopped off, and that just blew me away. That it was just it wasn't supposed to be funny, but it was very Quentin Tarantino that it wasn't supposed to be funny, but man, you just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah,
like that scene. Yeah, like that scene in Pulp Fiction where Vincent Vega accidentally shoots your guy in the back of the car.
Poor Marvin. R.I.P. Marvin. What do you think? I don't even have an opinion. Well, you gotta have an opinion. You think, pow! And man, I think everybody in the theater was just like, what just happened? That first time reaction just blew you away. So, and this is the stuff, Tarantino and Brendan, we're gonna have you back on here. I know we had a plan to do a Tarantino show, but we kind of pivoted because
we should still do that show.
Yeah, no, we absolutely should do that show. But we, know your feeling of Night of the Living Dead. So I don't know how many. So there's Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and then Land of the Dead and Dire of the Dead. That's the canon 5, right?
Then there's Survival of the Dead. Here's what I think. I think you've got your first 3. You've got Night, you've got Dawn, you've got Day, and I think Land is a pretty good epilogue kind of closure one. I don't think it fits exactly in the trilogy, I would say, but I think it's a good one in there. I think the other two after that are, George Romero had a mortgage.
Yeah. He had stuff to do. Yeah, and I remember when the diary, the found footage one, it seemed like it was a slam dunk to combine that, just like they were going to do that with Jason. At Camp Crystal Lake found footage, they were going to kind of do the same thing, like slam dunk. But, George Romero, it was to inspire so many filmmakers and then inspire remakes based on his films that were all good. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that the Night of the Living Dead, remake from 1990 was actually good. The Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder being its own thing was good. And Shaun of the Dead is a classic as well, right? I mean, it's part of the Cornetto trilogy, but I mean, it was clearly inspired by that.
There is one thing that really bothers me about the remake of Night of the Living Dead by Tom Savini.
What's that?
And if you watch the cemetery scene at the beginning, when Johnny is killed, he falls onto the curb of a grave. And it's just quite evidently a dummy. And it's disappointing because Tom Savini is well known for his craft.
Yeah.
And just watch it again and watch that scene where Johnny is killed. And it looks awful. So I can't understand it. It looks rushed.
So you think it's snuck by some editor that they did?
I think Tom Savini got his budget cut like last minute. He has a lot of stories online. If you look at him, he was fighting with the producers the whole time. They were cutting his effects out, so I think he ended up not super happy with the final product himself. He had like a bigger aspiration for it.
But just go back and have a look at Johnny's death in the 1990 Night of the Living Dead, and it's bad.
Bad.
And the rest of the movie is great. I really enjoyed the rest of the movie. Tony Todd is great, and the supporting cast are great.
Tony Todd is phenomenal. Yeah. I just remember the big fat zombie falling onto that straight shot. That I just remember that as part of the trailer, and that was like, okay, yeah, I'm in. But it was 1990. It was. I feel like film was trying to find itself again because we were just coming off the 80s and then the 90s, and grunge was coming with music. And I think film had to go through that too. And that's what gave us, Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, where there was a little bit of a pivot point. But these guys were all inspired about all the stuff that we're talking about here. So Brendan, that covers Night of the Living Dead. Did you want to talk anything about? Do you want us to? I'm going to try to pitch you on Anthropophagus by reading you.
Oh,
yeah. So known as the Beast and the Grim Reaper. It's Italian horror. So right there, it's already cultured. Directed by Joe D'Amato, already cultured, and George Eastman, who starred in the film as the cannibal. And you got pedigree in there. It's Tisa Farrow, not Mia Farrow, not the mother of Satan, Tisa Farrow, right?
Mia Farrow's sister,
yes, it's her sister. Yeah, and apparently her concern was she didn't want to be overshadowed by Mia, and obviously with Rosemary's Baby, she was, even though that was way earlier. But this film was described as having a noted place in the annals of the escalation of gore. If amongst fringe horror video audiences, it has been argued that the reason for its cult lies in the theme of cannibalism, hence consumption of humans, which lends itself to cult reception. But I can't say the word, Mario, and I don't know if you can say it, but when that scene happens, when he basically eats the unborn child, I was just like, what did we just... And that's, I think Joe Bob, he actually even cut at that part, and he's like, well, that's the scene we were talking about. Yeah, it was...
apart from that, which sounds awful.
Yeah.
I really don't... I find it very disturbing when children or animals are harmed in any way.
Well,
in any film. And I know it's been done like Assault on Precinct 13, there was the shooting of a child, if you remember. But it's very disturbing. Yeah, but like apart from that, was the movie actually any good?
No. Oh no.
Right. Okay.
No, there's not. Was it Knock on Our Door? No, it was not good. Make no mistake, it was interesting to watch. It almost felt like, as film connoisseurs or film fans, we wanted to just do our homework.
That was me saying that other guests are here.
Oh, they are here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, Brendan, I want to give you the final word, Night of the Living Dead, while we start to wrap you up. But thank you so much for being on here, and we're going to have you back on here pleasure. Live. And thank you for staying up, because I know it's like 1 a.m. in Cork, Ireland, and you got to go to work in a couple hours. So thank you so much for staying up and joining us on Dose Incredibles, because you are Dose Incredibles International. Anthropophagus.
Can you say that again, please?
Anthropophagus.